What is going on, everyone, and welcome to WreckTalk. Today, we're going to be talking about Dawg Nation and why, like the majority of the UGA fan base, they're softer than a peeled grape. This is the weirdest, way someone has come at Tech that I've seen. And look, I grew up near Athens. I've heard all the UGA trash talk and everything leading into clean old-fashioned hate. Basically, from what I can gather, these guys are scared that Georgia Tech might embarrass them, so they have to manufacture fake outrage to, in their mind, get their team ready to play Georgia Tech. Now, who does that sound like? It sounds like moronic New Jersey ex-Georgia coach, now head coach at Syracuse. Sounds like his same fake outrage. You know, he was begging College Game Day to come to Syracuse because they're playing Miami. And like that, Georgia will be begging the playoff committee to let them in the 12 team after they tote this L to my Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. This guy claims that Brent Keys trash talking him. Basically, all he said is, and we're going to listen to it, all he said is he's passionate about playing Georgia. So obviously, these guys don't know what trash talk is, but I'm going to tell you something. You're going to find out what trash talk looks like today. All right? So let's get into it. All right, screw your
Bulldogs
intro.
fans, presented today by Kroger. We are very, very loaded today. Obviously, tomorrow's a game day in Athens. We don't take that lightly, and yet
So this is obviously before they played UMass. So for all the Georgia fans that want to laugh about us struggling with a not very good NC State team, you let UMass, who's straight ass, run right through you for 226 rushing yards.
There is also some other stuff going on here today that I think you might be very interested in. Georgia Tech last night, Thursday night football against NC State, got a win in what was a pretty sloppy affair, all things considered. And yet after the game, the Yellow Jackets had plenty to say about Georgia Tech. I should say Georgia Tech having plenty to say about Georgia.
Incorrect. Again, this guy's acting like the entire Georgia Tech NC State postgame was about them. One, and this is a weird dichotomy they have, they can't stand people not talking about them because they have sensitive, fragile little egos that with the smallest bit of stress crumbles right before your eyes. But then they also can't take anyone not saying basically anything other than abject praise and everything Georgia does is fantastic. They can't handle that either.
Continuing what has been a trend for these Yellow Jackets during the Brent Key era. This is worth paying attention to here today. 1 week away from clean old-fashioned hate next Friday night. Getting you ready for that and sort of setting the overall tone for what the next 7 days are going to look like with Georgia playing another home game tomorrow. So you need to hear this. We're going to make sure you hear that off the top of today's show.
Yeah, this guy's feelings are so thoroughly thrashed. We're going to start the first 20 or 30 minutes of the show just talking about what Brent Key said about us. Hear what Brent Key said about us. Oh, my God.
Exactly what they were saying on North Avenue last night. In addition to that, a guy that sometimes we would say that we like and certainly respect, Joel Klatt, lead analyst for Fox, essentially the avatar for the other half of the sport, the Big Ten. He took a weird shot, and no way else to say it. It's a jab, it's a shot. He took a very weird shot at Kirby Smart. We're going to play that for you here today, and I think it's going to make everything clear.
It's going to make everything clear, yeah. My God. We're the victims. Georgia loves being victims, boy. They love playing the victim. Joe Klatt's talking about us. Brent Keys talking about us, man. We got to do something about this.
Tech saying what they said. ACC maybe doing what it did last night. Guys representing the Big Ten saying what they're saying. It is hand-to-hand combat the rest of the way. The playoffs for Georgia begin right now. UMass tomorrow, Tech after that. And if you win both those games, then maybe somebody else come December. But it is game face on, chin strap buckled. Get your mind right. That plus some recruiting talk from Jeff Sintel here, too, as Georgia gets set to host a bunch of big visitors. And Jeff's been talking to some elite recruits here as well. So we're going to cover all of that ground. We're glad you were with us for it. It is Dawg Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by
the daily podcast for people that need a group therapy session over their team that tends to win a lot, but they can't handle the least bit of criticism.
Kroger. And it begins right now.
Today's episode of Dawg Nation.
Davey Pye, you're rolling into a UMass tomorrow. It's senior day. It'd be easy to sort of mail this one in and just do sort of a retrospective on some seniors. And obviously, we're very
Your team tried to mail it in.
happy for them. And their senior day tomorrow, long list of folks will get a chance to be recognized before the game. It's always a special moment. And obviously, we'll take that with the seriousness that it deserves. But there is no nostalgia.
That it deserves. Trying to do your Matthew McConaughey impression now?
On today's show. There is no looking back to the past and do you remember when? We'll have none of that here today. We are literally shot out of a cannon about everything that's going on around college football, and obviously all of the race for a championship goes through Georgia. So therefore, we're talking about what's happening around UGA. That means coming up in a couple of minutes. One of the most
It doesn't go. What are you talking about? For a championship? You can't be talking about the SEC because he ends up saying they're probably not going to the SEC. So they think all roads to a college football national title run through them. What happened last year?
respected voices in all of college football has taken what I think is kind of a pot shot at Kirby Smart, a very weird jab, a very pointed level of criticism, and seems to want to amplify that as loudly as he possibly can. So we're going to do that on this show. And I think it's
Hate to break it to you. There are valid criticisms of Kirby Smart. I know this is news to you because you live in an echo chamber that is Athens. There are valid criticisms of Kirby
sets the
Smart.
stage very well for what comes next for Georgia. But prior to that, did you happen to watch Thursday night football last night between Georgia Tech and NC State? For a good while, neither team could tackle anybody, but eventually.
All right. So how to say I didn't watch the game without saying it. Georgia Tech struggled at tackling at times. NC State didn't. Both teams didn't struggle tackling, but go ahead.
Tech does emerge as the winner there, getting the win on Thursday night and getting to, I guess that's 7 wins on the season for Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Legitimately improved play from the morabound. Is that the word? Morabound? Is that a word?
Yeah. Just quit while you're ahead.
Morabound era of Jeff Collins. Brent Key has clearly shown improvement. But Key also seems to be a little proud of himself. Key seems to be sort of feeling himself here a little bit. And if Key's not careful, he's going to create a real problem for himself 7 days from now. Because
Go back and watch the post-game press conference Key did. Tell me where he is feeling himself in that. Again, just like Fran Brown, who manufactured some beef between him and Key because he said he didn't invite him over for Thanksgiving or the summer barbecue, and then basically got mad at himself and said he didn't deserve soap. You have to manufacture something that doesn't exist here. But tell us about it. What did this motherless shit say about Kirby? God, he must have talked about his mom and his dad, must have called players out by name.
Because if you were paying attention, and perhaps you weren't, I know there was an NFL game on. It was snowing there, and people are obviously interested in that type of thing. But if you were watching Georgia Tech last night, or if you happened to see some of the stuff after the game, what you saw is 1 week ahead of clean old-fashioned, hey, Georgia does play Georgia Tech next Friday night. The Tech folks trash talking here a little bit, and they've been.
If you're talking about Brent Key and the players, I don't know what you're on about. Again, this guy doesn't know what trash talk is. But this inbred reject is about to learn what trash talk is.
Doing this for a little while. And normally, if we're just being honest here, normally Georgia Tech is not on our radar at all. Frankly, I don't know that we've ever hardly mentioned Tech on this show other than the week of the game. Now, technically, we're still 1 week out, so maybe we're kind of continuing that normal tradition. But we just don't typically notice Tech.
And to be fair, I get it. This rivalry hasn't been competitive, and it hasn't really been a true rivalry because Georgia Tech has not been very good. That's a fact. And there are probably a lot of Georgia Tech fans that don't want to hear that. Yeah, Paul won 3 in the time he was here. But are you really happy with 3 wins out of 15 or 17 or however many it's been? No, it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment for Georgia Tech. It's an embarrassment as a fan. And Georgia Tech has to make this more competitive. Now, what we're going to see is that as it does become more competitive, these guys can't handle that. Think back to last year. You're supposed to beat us by, 1,000,000 points. Tech's in position to win that game late. And then the excuses come. Just like y'all bitched at Ohio State fans when you beat them in the playoffs and they complained about refs for a year straight. That's how I look at you. It's not ever that Georgia just got outplayed in a game or, didn't execute like they should. We're sleepwalking through it. It was the refs. We were overlooking. Well, go ahead and overlook. Go ahead and just think you're going to steamroll over Tech in Athens. That's fine.
Usually takes place the week before the SEC championship. Georgia usually has a lot of stuff going on, and Tech is only usually kind of a small part of that. This year, though, if we're being honest here, it is a little bit different. Georgia, unless some sort of mathematical formula takes a twist that I don't expect it to, Georgia is probably not playing in the SEC championship. It seems like the tiebreakers.
Now, that's changed since this aired. Obviously, Georgia's clinched now, and I think they'll play either the winner of Texas or Texas A&M because the SEC has a bunch of 2- and 3-loss teams. Vandy's running through it, South Carolina, Florida. The bottom teams in the conference just are beating the top teams in the conference, but the ACC's trash, right? Yeah.
There's going to go somebody else's way. And Georgia might be in the college football playoff, but here's the thing. Georgia probably needs to beat Georgia Tech to get there. So it could be next Friday night. Georgia, for the first time in a very long time, gives its full attention to Georgia Tech. Loud crowd, Black Friday night, big national TV spot. Georgia may be fully focused on these Yellow Jackets for maybe the first time in I don't know how long it's been since that's perhaps been true, but next Friday night could be an example of that. So I know Georgia's got a game tomorrow against UMass, and we'll get to that, I promise, at least
didn't look good
in some form or fashion. But can we kind of talk about what's sort of already happening in Atlanta ahead of this game? Because there is some real trash talk going on.
Again, I'm telling you, man, I mean, I know you got your little comb over going on. You probably go to church on Sunday. Everyone talks about how great Georgia is and then, throws $1 in the box. But that's not trash talk. If you think that's trash talk, you're not a college football fan, and you never were. Okay?
First of all, let's start with Brent Key, who was so proud of himself for eking past NC State, even though the team that Georgia just blew out last week blew out NC State to begin the season, so be careful there.
Yeah, well, if you want to do the transitive property, which is oh so useless, much like everything you say on your show, Georgia Tech beat Georgia State, who beat Vandy, who beat Alabama, who beat you. So what is the point in doing any of that?
But nonetheless, feeling really good about himself. And reporter asked Brent Key about his feelings about Georgia, something that Key has been pretty clear about himself in the past. Now, this is a little bit like sarcastic, and it's kind of...
Well, wait. Is it trash talk or is it sarcastic? Well, like, which one is it?
Awkward, as many things around North Avenue can be.
I get he's taking a shot. Brent Key is an awkward guy in press conferences, though. I will give him that.
This is a little bit awkward, but I think it sets the...
Part of why it's awkward, and you'll see, is because the question is presented in a unclear and kind of awkward way.
Stage for, they all of a sudden Tech decides this may be a rivalry again between Georgia because last year was a little bit close.
What do you want them to do? Just not care about it? I mean, that's the hypocrisy of these Georgia fans. Like, we want it to be competitive, but we really don't want it to be competitive. I can't tell you how many Georgia fans are like, man, it'd really be fun if this was competitive again. No, it wouldn't. Not for you, because that would mean Georgia Tech's winning every other year. And your fragile, soft egos can't handle that. You can't even handle someone saying they're passionate about playing you, as you're going to see here.
This is Brent Key last night talking about Georgia. You're going to like this.
Man, this must be rough. I mean, we might have to fire him after whatever he said that was so horrible. Let's see.
Coach, you're obviously very passionate when it comes to Georgia. Would you say your players are just as passionate?
Huh? Passionate about them?
Yeah.
I'm passionate about Georgia Tech.
No, Georgia.
I'm not passionate about Georgia.
See, it's a weird exchange, first of all, but I've yet to hear this trash talk.
Okay. All right.
Not one bit.
Okay.
I'm passionate about playing them.
Okay.
I'm passionate about those guys in the locker room.
So would you say your players are
There's the awkward laugh.
equally as passionate about playing them?
So are the players equally as passionate about playing them? Yes. Well, isn't that what you want? Isn't that what makes good football? Two teams that really want to beat each other and they're passionate about the game. They're passionate about playing each other. Where's the freaking problem in any of this?
It's the next game. Come on.
Now we've cranked the awkward up to 11.
No, I mean, we came in the locker room and we got things we got to clean up tomorrow. We got things we have to correct. We'll be out tomorrow. And look,
Really sounds like he's full of himself here, doesn't it?
we have the biggest game of the year coming up. It's in-state rivalry game. And that's what it's about, rivalry games.
So he says he's passionate about playing Georgia. The players are passionate about playing Georgia and recognizes the importance of the rivalry. Where is he full of himself? Where is the trash talk? Where is this slight at Georgia that's so bad? You've got to commit the first 20 minutes of your dog water show to this guy, to what this guy said.
So I can't tell if Brent Key's trying to be funny there or not. I'm not
Well, to be fair, a lot of times I can't either.
sure anybody else can either, but he says, well, I'm passionate about playing Georgia. I'm not passionate about Georgia,
Oh my God. Can you believe he said that?
but I'm passionate about playing Georgia. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Be very careful for what you wish for.
Let me tell you something. Replace that Kroger sponsorship with a Tampax sponsorship. You have to be not only one of the dumbest people I've ever reacted to, and no one's listened to more Jeff Collins interviews than I have, but you're certainly the softest. Now, you don't have to choose Tampax. Whatever tampon brand that you prefer, you can go get a sponsorship with them. It'd be more fitting. Sure, it will be mutually beneficial. Be careful about what? Let me ask the Georgia fans who have blood-related parents like this guy does something. By the way, that's a little trash talk since you don't seem to be able to recognize it. When Steve Spurrier was beating your ass all throughout the 90s, and no one was as quippy with the one-liners as Steve Spurrier was, and in fact, I guarantee you no one hates Georgia as much as Steve Spurrier does. Were y'all talking about how much respect you had for Steve Spurrier in Florida? Nick Saban's owned you. I don't hear y'all talking about how much respect and how much you love Alabama and Nick Saban. All I hear is bitching about referees as it pertains to those schools. So what is even the point of this? Again, I contend the point of this is deep down in places that this man with his awful comb over doesn't want to talk about. Things he doesn't talk about with mommy and daddy is he's worried about Georgia Tech Friday. He's pulling the Fran Brown card and trying to inject some, whatever he thinks he needs to win this game.
For all the reasons I just mentioned. Brent Key had the privilege last year of sort of sneaking up on UGA.
And again, more softness. It's never that Georgia got outplayed in any game or out-schemed or out-executed or that a team just played them well. We were overlooking you. No one makes excuses like these dummies. No one. And no one's softer than these dummies.
Do not believe in this particular situation, especially based on some of these words that I'm sharing with you here right now. Do not believe that Georgia Tech next week will have the luxury of sneaking up on Georgia.
Good.
I believe Georgia Tech may have the sort of full attention of UGA next week. And frankly, I hope they do because of stuff like that. Now,
so let's try and unpack this concentrated stupidity. You're saying Georgia would not have taken Tech seriously had Brent Key not said that him and his players we're passionate about playing you. Is that what you're saying? How to say I don't know anything about this sport and I've never been a fan of it without saying it. I mean, you could never do this from my side of things. You act like Georgia fans are the pinnacle of culture and morality. There's not a more annoying, low IQ, obnoxious, drunken group of morons than Georgia fans are. You film yourselves crawling like dogs, barking each other, on the sidewalk. And then you want to take offense because Brent Key says he's passionate about playing you. I'm passionate about trashing you, not Georgia fans, though that is true. This idiot right here. Even if you're a Georgia fan, I feel like you have to look at this and be like, what is he on about? Go watch someone else if you're a Georgia fan. I just did a show with the Doghouse podcast. Go watch him, not this moron.
Now, the reason why the reporter asked the question that he does is because of something that Brent Key said to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution earlier this summer. I want to read.
Yeah, he said he hated them 5 months ago. They're still not over it.
This to you on the screen. You perhaps missed this at the time because I'm sure tech's probably not on your radar, but for this particular week, I believe that it should. Here is the quote the AJC had from Brent Key. I believe this is back. It's either June or July. It's back during the summer. It says, Georgia Tech coach Brent Key did not hold back Wednesday when asked about Georgia football during an alumni event. Here's the quote from Brent Key. There's nothing I hate more in the world. It's probably the only thing I actually hate. When I say hate, I truly despise everything about it. I really do. He means the University of Georgia. So,
all right, go ahead and cry about it.
He, Tech alumnus, he's the Tech coach. We think rivalries are fun. We don't really have a huge problem with Tech kind of leaning into the rivalry.
What are you talking about? You don't have a problem with Tech leaning into the rivalry? Man, you commit like 30 minutes to bitch, whining, and complaining about that very thing. Choose what you want. You want it to be competitive. You want to go back and forth. You want some trash talk. No, that's not what he wants. What he wants is anyone who ever says anything about Georgia to cup their balls, tickle their taint, and pat them on their soft asses there. That's what they want. Anything shy of that, they melt down, they fold like a cheap lawn chair.
Key, the alumnus of Tech, leaning into the rivalry. We don't have a huge problem with that.
Yes, you do.
Necessarily. But boy, that's not the kind of thing that Kirby Smart says very much. It's just not. And I guess maybe sometimes when it comes to rivalry games, maybe I wish Smart would do some of that kind of stuff.
Commits 10 minutes to bitching about Brent Key, talking about the rivalry. Also, this guy, I wish my coach would do that.
A little bit more. Smart doesn't typically do that. And I think there's probably a reason that Smart doesn't. I think that Brent Key next week may find out the reason why. You better be careful what you say. The fact that he says he hates Georgia. Listen, it's a long season.
Yeah, Kirby might not say that. I'll tell you what he does do. He pushes opposing teams' quarterbacks when he loses his cool. SEC office comes out and says that, something should have been done about it in the game when they played Mississippi State because they're being competitive with them and they don't like it. They have like 1 million driving-related incidences, one of which ended in a loss of life incident with a staff member of their school driving. It doesn't stop. It only gets, more numerous from there. Kirby says, hey, you really know who needs to deal with punishing these players? The NIL collective does. So yeah, save me on Kirby Smart is some pinnacle of ethos.
Getting guys up, for games is not always an easy thing to do because in the SEC anyway, I can't speak for the ACC, but in the SEC, the week-to-week grind of what you have to do to compete is so hard that you don't have a full tank of gas every single week.
Sounds like an excuse to me.
So if you're trying to get Georgia up for one more regular season game, that final regular season game, knowing that there's a playoff berth perhaps on the other side of it for you, be able to say, hey, this coach said in the summer he hates you. This guy hates you. That may be enough. Like literally, that might be enough to get Georgia fired.
That might be enough for you to get the kids to do their job in the rivalry game. This man, if he ever was in a men's locker room, would be whistling Stranger in Paradise. This guy doesn't know anything about athletics or what it takes to win football games. I'm not saying I do either, but this is fan fodder that has nothing to do with the game that's going to be played on Friday. What the game on Friday is going to come down to is schematics, X's and O's, preparation, assignment, all the fundamentals of football. Whoever executes their game plan better Friday, that's who's going to win. It's not going to be because you got your feelings hurt about what the opposing coach or player said. That's abjectly stupid. You care about it because you can't handle anyone not praising Georgia because you live in this low IQ echo chamber that won't allow any criticism in or any trash talk in because you can't even identify trash talk when it's either in front of you or not.
Fired up and ready to go for this upcoming Friday night. And frankly, I hope that it probably is, because when he's saying that in the summer and kind of doing the whole thing about I'm passionate about playing Georgia, I mean, I do. I hope the Georgia players notice. And if we can do something to fan the flames and stir the pot and kind of hype this up, well, of course we're going to do that.
Why would you need that? All I hear from you guys all year long is you're the greatest team that's ever been invented. Why would you need to pay attention to any of this to get ready to play? And also, if it takes players listening to you talk about Brent Key talking about being passionate about the game to be serious about playing it and prepared to play it, then Georgia's the softest team of all time. Then Georgia has some major culture problems, and I'm not talking about ethically. In this instance, I'm talking about what it takes to win football games. If that's what you're saying. Now, we all know what you're saying is dumb and doesn't really apply here. In other words, if Georgia comes out and beats the brakes off Georgia Tech Friday, it's not going to be because of anything Brent Key said. And if Georgia Tech were to upset Georgia, it's not going to be because of anything you said that I play for the players or Kirby says or any of your players say. It's going to be because someone executed better.
That's just sort of what we do. But Brent Key was asked, do your players feel the same way? We know what you think about Georgia. Do your players feel the same way? Well, a former Georgia player, E.J. Lightsey, now at Georgia Tech, he was asked about his feelings about Georgia last night. And obviously, as you would expect, he says, damn, we want to win. This is what Lightsey said about that.
The mentality, just like it is every other week, we're trying to go and get a win. But this one's going to be great for sure. Big rivalry, old school, and like we say, state championship. So I'm just ready to make it a Friday and come out with a win.
He called it a state championship.
No problem with that whatsoever. As I said before, rivalries, fun. The other side, of course, they want to win. EJ's been through a lot. Seems like a pretty good dude. Wished him well when he left Georgia. Wish him well now. He says he's ready to compete. Like there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so a guy who used to play for Georgia is the only one in this that you have no issue with.
Brent Key going around saying, "Oh, I hate Georgia." Maybe that's sort of getting into a different direction. But
you said you wished Kirby would do it.
He's saying what he said there, not a huge issue for me whatsoever. However, there were a couple of other Tech players who were also speaking, and they were asked. Same reporter that asked about Brent Key asked these particular players about how they felt about Georgia, and do they feel the same way that Brent Key does? And here's where that trash talk sort of continues. Very different than the E.J. Lightsey thing of, as a former Georgia player, you would imagine he would, kind of handle himself with class, and of course.
Stop. Again, the pearl clutching, just the complete tone deaf, brain dead takes. Acting like Georgia players are the pinnacle of morality or upper echelon of morality is like saying Riley Reed, and you know who I'm talking about, don't pretend like you don't, is who you'd want to take home to mama. Didn't you have a player that you dismissed from the team that was charged with assaulting an unborn child? Didn't you have a player that was also charged with holding his girlfriend hostage? Didn't a guy who never had an issue with driving-related incidents in Trevor Etienne get a DUI almost immediately when he came into Athens? Don't you have such an issue with driving-related incidences and a guy named Gant being your fixer for the APD that you had to come out and make statements about it? You acting like Georgia players know how to act as it pertains to the low bar of just not being in trouble with the law is hilarious. And again, Kirby's, it's either in-house or the NIL collective needs to handle it. But yeah, man, you got a good culture going on there for sure.
Of course, he did. Other Tech players, though, were a lot more, I guess, open about their feelings about Georgia. And listen.
So what? I guarantee if I went and stuck a microphone in the faces of a bunch of Georgia players, they'd be talking shit about Tech. Good. You don't seem to understand what a rivalry is. That's your problem.
Our agenda here is pretty transparent. I hope the Georgia players notice this. This is what a couple of
your agenda is to try and manufacture fake outrage because you're scared of getting your ass beat by Georgia Tech. Don't make any mistake about that.
Tech players said about Georgia last night, now 1 week out from clean old-fashioned hay.
Your coach has expressed in the past that Georgia's not exactly his favorite team. Does that...
Oh, my God. Did you hear what he said about Georgia? What he said about my dogs?
Apply also to the players or not?
To hell with Georgia.
Piss on them. Piss on every one of them. By the way, that's a tradition at Tech. All right. That's not just something he said out of nowhere. Right. Kind of like Tech is in Alabama's fight song. Should we make something of that? Right. You call us a bunch of nerds. Should we take grave offense to that? No. It's part of the tradition of the rivalry, moron. I don't know what to tell you.
What he said.
They're laughing now. I am curious to find out if they'll be laughing next Friday night.
Why don't you go ahead and make a statement? Just say your team's going to win. That's what I'm saying. And look, unlike all the Georgia fans that didn't get on social media until 2020, who are the ones that I have to deal with, I'll be here if Georgia hands us our head. And I'll eat my crow. You want to do this fence riding thing and pearl clutching and fake outrage because you're not very good at what you do. Because your ego's so fragile, you couldn't take coming out and having a hot take or a definitive strong take and being wrong.
I am. As I said before, look, this rivalry is obviously, to the extent it even still is a rivalry, has been going Georgia's way a lot in recent years.
Sure.
But the game, even, by the way, some Georgia fans would sort of wish it would sometimes be a little bit different.
No, you don't want it. You don't want it to be competitive. Again, what you want is Georgia Tech to come in ranked 10th and you beat them by 17. Let me tell you something. If Georgia Tech starts winning this thing every other year or rattles off 2 or 3 in a row, you'll melt like Frosty the Snowman in the Sudan, okay?
The game has sort of lost some of its luster a little bit in a world in which, everybody cares about the college football playoff, especially the teams that have a chance to be in it. What you do in a game that doesn't really have a lot of playoff implications, those games just don't seem to matter as much anymore. So for Georgia against Georgia Tech, a lot of times in the past, it's been about avoiding injury. It's been about getting ready for the SEC championship and going on in the last couple of years anyway with a real legitimate
okay, rest all your starters this time. See what happens.
Shot to win the national championship. In fact, there was a year in 2020 where Georgia and Georgia Tech didn't even play, and nobody seemed to even really miss it because of how uncompetitive the rivalry was at that time. We're not liars around here. We're willing to be honest that to Brent Keys' credit, he has made Georgia Tech a far better team than it has been in a lot of recent years, and they are suddenly sort of trying and recruiting in a way they haven't in the last couple.
We're not just trying, buddy. Christian Garrett committed to Tech still. And I don't know. I mean, you should have a better beat on recruiting than me. Y'all are definitely trying to get him hard. We just flipped a kid from Clemson, just flipped a kid from Louisville, signed a 5-star in Josh Petty. That goes into what I think it has gotten under your skin. So as you see the writing on the wall coming, and you're not just going to get to ring in a win every year in clean old-fashioned hate. You're going to have to eat some crow eventually.
Couple of decades, which is kind of an interesting thing to see.
Oh my God. Show all the Georgia players that sign. It's the only way they're going to be ready to play this game. Show it to them. It's going to get them ready.
So, I mean, there's definitely a pulse with Georgia Tech in a way that has probably not existed in almost the entirety of the time that we've been doing Dawg Nation Daily. We're not lying about that. But sometimes that creates a problem because sometimes that means now you have Georgia's attention.
Oh, okay. Did Ole Miss not have your attention? Did Alabama, who's owned you for a decade now, not have your attention? Was that the problem? Again, brain dead, just stupid talking points that have nothing to do with football.
And if you didn't have their attention before, I believe you might have it now.
Good.
I believe you might get Georgia's full focus next Friday night. And you might regret going around all summer talking about how much you hate Georgia.
He's quoted in one statement all summer. All summer, all Georgia fans do is bark at each other and talk about how great they are, talking about smelling, your own farts. All Georgia fans do all summer is pick up DUIs and reckless driving charges.
Or laughing and giggling during a post-game press conference saying to hell with Georgia, whether that's a school tradition or not. I think you might be led to regret that.
Yeah, we should change our school traditions to satiate your sensitivities. I'll tell you what, you could have two sponsors, Tampax and whatever psychiatrist you like to see, because y'all are going to need it come Friday about midnight.
You might be led to eat those words next Friday night.
I have the ability to eat my words. That's fine. You don't.
So the bottom line is simply this. As Georgia gets ready to play a game tomorrow,
that they look like ass in.
I'm going to borrow something that Lane Kiffin said to his team the other day. To all of you watching, listening right now, welcome to the 2024 College Football Playoff. Because for Georgia, tomorrow it begins. If you win that one, you're set up for Tech next Friday night. That's a game that not only gives you the bragging rights of a rivalry win, but it probably also secures a college football playoff berth, the real playoff. It probably secures one of those berths for you too. And oh yeah, the team that sort of stands in your way of being where you want to be at the end of December.
They said mean things about us like they were passionate about the game.
They're saying stuff like they hate you. They're saying to hell with you. They're saying all that. They're essentially, you heard the guy right there a minute ago. They're saying,
he's laughing at us. Look, he's laughing. I'm not going to watch any more of this brain dead, inane, just stupid Georgia talk. I have no idea what this guy's on about. Again, this has to do with the fact that this guy deep down is afraid that Tech's going to upset Georgia Friday, and he don't know how to deal with it. So he's got to manufacture some reason in his mind to get the players up to play the game. Now, I'm going to address something that wasn't talked about in here because they had not quenched. So I had a call-in show last night. Some Georgia fans called in, oh, well, this game doesn't really matter because we could lose a Tech, win the SEC title game, and then we're still in the playoffs. So it don't really matter whether we win or lose. Again, that's an excuse. That's you setting up your excuse for when you do lose. And I'll just say this, if you feel that way, just play all your third stringers then. If it don't matter, just play all your third stringers. Don't even try. Then you can go with the excuse of, oh, well, we don't even try. Whatever excuse you need. So this is the weirdest thing I've seen, like a Georgia publication come out with. I don't understand it. I can't, a lot of things that Georgia fans say that you can't make sense of because they're not rooted in anything intelligent, as this guy's demonstrated with everything he said on the subject. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Y'all have a good one. And to hell with Georgia. Piss on them. getting your feelings about it, Dawg Nation.